concentrating on the revamping process. We have two speakers. We have our first speaker, which is Andrea, who is the Assistant Director of the Woburn Public Library in Woburn, Massachusetts. And following, we will have Sarah Leonardi, maybe, yes, no, who is Head of Circulation and Public Services at the Amherst Town Library in Amherst, New Hampshire. So, Andrea? Yes.
Thank you so much for having me today. Can everybody hear me? So I'm the Assistant Director of the Woburn Public Library, and I started there in August of 2013. For full disclosure, I actually grew up in Woburn, and I left for 13 years to be a high school teacher and then to be a librarian all along the eastern seaboard. So, and I came back to Woburn when their Assistant Director position opened, and it's really fun and exciting. But I had not been to their website since I was probably in college when I was home for summer break. And then again when I applied. So what I was used to seeing was that. And speaking of dial-up, can everybody hear it in their heads? So this is actually from Internet Archive, and it's a Netscape page. So this is where it began, and that says 2005 because that was the year that the Internet Archive had it. But they had that website since 2000. So that's what it looked like. And then that's what it looked like in 2009, and that's what it looked like when I applied in 2013. So not bad for a change. So this one was actually developed by the former assistant director's husband, but I would not recommend having a family member or a friend of administration revamp the website. Even though they might have coding skills, it makes it really difficult for staff to give honest feedback because they feel like, oh my gosh, this is my boss's husband, and if I don't like what he's doing, then oh my goodness, I don't know, what does that mean for my job? So we definitely knew, well, no one at work at that time had anyone who could code at home, so it wasn't an issue. But when I started in August, this is what we had. In September, after having discussions with staff and meeting with each staff member individually and learning what they did and then hearing what frustrations they may have, website was number one. So anytime they would try to update it, something would break. So if you try to update, say, baby songs, an event, then you would get no picture here. And we couldn't figure out what was happening. Why is this breaking? And there was no rhyme or reason to it. It was an older version of WordPress. It was really locked down. So staff had some privileges, but the former assistant director's husband still had the administrative privileges. So it was very difficult to work with. So that brings me to, these are the main issues we had. So it wasn't intuitive, it was very difficult to manage. And the design was outdated because smartphones were a growing device in our population that we served, that they used. So we decided that we needed something different and something that would actually accommodate our users' preferences. So we started off with all librarians do with research. So the first thing we looked at was CMSs. We were using WordPress, but we weren't sure if all WordPress was like this, if all WordPress was not going to give us what we needed. So we looked at WordPress, we looked at Drupal, we figured out costs, also staff time. So if we were going to do this ourselves, how much staff time do we need to devote? How much is it going to cost for training? All of these different things. We decided to go with a free CMS if we could. And we decided, after weighing the staff versus professional web designer, we decided professional web designer because it didn't make sense for us to build it from the bottom, but then we could always be taught how to maintain and update. And then we did evaluation. So we looked at our current site, what wasn't working, but what did we like about it that we wanted to keep and transfer. The sites that we admired. So I had worked in North Carolina for a bit, And the Durham County Public Library, I love their website. It was so clean and so easy to navigate, very intuitive. So we started looking at different libraries throughout the U.S. that we really enjoyed their content and their look and the features that they had. And we called them. So we said, what are you using? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? So we got more information that way. And then we started looking at our local libraries and ones that we really liked around us. And we contacted their website design firms too. And if they did it in-house, how did they do it? So we did all of this in September and October of 2013. So this is where it began. Our director is a part of Rotary and a member of Rotary, and Sterling Technologies had presented to Rotary about website design. So our director had contact with Sterling Technologies, who is actually the design firm that we decided to go with. We made an RFP. Well, these are our evaluations: our designer, the form, the function, the features, what we liked. So after we did that, we decided, well, we have to figure out, if we're going with a professional design firm, who these designers are that we want to contact. But we also need a good request for a proposal. We need a good RFP so that we get everything that we're looking for in this, and we get an estimate that's accurate, because we can only go to our board once with a number and get this information. So we took the information from our site evaluations, what we admired from them. We took examples from other libraries, their RFPs. Cary Memorial Library has a great RFP. So if you know Corin Stembridge, I would ask her, because it's great. I don't know if she's here today, but they had a great RFP. And so we utilized some of their language, because there were some things that we didn't think about when we were doing our research. And it was great to see what other people asked for. And then input from staff. So we actually hadn't formed an official committee yet. The reference librarian, Greg, and I were doing a lot of the research at first, and we had a couple of other people looking. We serve a population of 39,000, but we're a small library staff, so everyone's wearing multiple hats, as probably everyone experiences. So we kept it small at first. So we had, what unique needs we have. So for our library, for instance, half of our nonfiction collection is inaccessible to the public because our balconies are shut down due to OSHA and safety concerns. We can run up and get things for the public, but they can't go up there themselves. So basically, it's like working in a medieval library, and it actually looks like a medieval library if you've ever looked at it online. So we have that issue, and we also have a museum upstairs that no one can get into. We can bring people up, but we do it very rarely because it's a place that is not staffed, and it's also just by a winding circular staircase. So we had unique needs that we needed to address, because we want to highlight those collections online. We want to give people good access to our online materials, because they can't physically get to everything in our library, which hopefully will change in the next 3 to 5 years when we do our building project. So we have our RFP, and then what we did. So this RFP, actually, we put it together in October, so at the beginning of October, and then we sent it out to the design firms that we liked, the ones that had really good websites that we had seen, because we wanted to target, these are the people that are doing what we want to see done on our website. So we contacted the 3 firms. For Massachusetts procurement law, you need to get 3 quotes if something's going to be between $5,000 and $24,999. So we contacted 3 firms that we really liked. We received and reviewed their 3 proposals. So this is in November of 2013, this process. We put together a committee. So we made it representative of all areas of our public library. So we had tech services, we had children's, we had our archivist, it was myself, the director, our reference person, and We showed some things to our circulation staff, but no one on our circulation staff was really gung-ho about being on it. So we took people who wanted to be on the committee. So people who were interested in this and wanted to. So that was our committee. We didn't have any trustees. We didn't have any members of the public. We didn't want it to get muddled, I guess. So we thought we had a good idea of what our community needed from just discussing with them informally. So we rated all the expertise, the content management systems. We got 3 different content management systems. There's WordPress. The one we had before was on WordPress. There was Drupal, and there was Expression Engine. And we liked WordPress because it was free. And you didn't have to pay for different modules. So if you wanted e-commerce, you didn't have to pay a fee to get an e-commerce module to be put on your site. So that we could have seen being cost prohibitive as we went forward. And the price, so our range was $8,500 to $25,000 is what came in for our website. So we decided on Sterling Technologies. They were local. Tom Sterling is actually here today. He's right here. He designed our website. All good things. Even if he wasn't here, I would not have anything bad. So we decided on them in December, and we had to make a written recommendation to our board of trustees to let them know who we decided on. Then it took them 2 meetings. So one meeting they got the proposal or the recommendation, and then the second meeting they voted. So January is when we got the okay to move ahead. And we informed Sterling and the other firms of the decision. I called the other 2 firms. I think it's really important to call and talk to the people instead of just sending an email, because you want to keep those relationships good. And then we got to our contract phase, and Tom can attest to this. It took a little while, right? So Sterling Technologies had their own contract that they use with all of their different businesses, nonprofits. But our purchasing agent informed us that we had to use the city contract. So they had to somehow merge those 2 together. And we had our statement of work and our project plan. So our statement of work was built off of our request for proposals. So we had every element that we had requested and that we desired on our website in that statement of work, so that when the project was completed, we could go back and say, boom, 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 these were all hit, they're all there, and the contract has met its requirements. And the project plan, so that was our timeline. So it's a very strict timeline when you enter into one of these contracts for you and for the designer. And then we had our city solicitor, so she had to do all the language review on the contract. So it took about a month to get all of this done. So while we were waiting for the contract stuff to be done, because we had nothing to do with that part, it became city and Sterling, and we were kind of in the middle waiting. So what we decided to do was get started on our content at this time, because it goes so quickly once you get to your project, that we thought, let's do a complete overhaul now, and we have at least a rough draft of the content that we want. So we archived the materials that were on our current site. We only kept what we liked. The rest of the things we just let go. We discussed the pages to populate our new site. So each service area was tasked with coming up with the content for their service area. So we wrote all of the content. And then we drafted that content to fill those pages. So that was a very important part. So that was us getting together twice to review the content that we had created before we actually contracted. This is the timeline. So you'll see September 2013, we started our research, and then it went all the way to May 23rd for our site launch. So it took a little while to get there. But after the board decision and contract negotiation, then it began. So it was really only March 6th through May 23rd that we had to create our site. So the design meeting, we looked at things like, different websites that we liked, we brought those forward. Content pages that we were thinking about, but it was really a lot about the feel, the look, just a lot of different thoughts on what direction we're going into, because we had talked about a lot in our RFP, in our statement of work about the specifics. So Sterling, which was Tom Sterling and Brian Hanna at that point, they showed us, they listened to our input, and then they went off and they created their first draft of our website. We had to send them our content by March 16th, so that's not a lot of time. So if you haven't taken time before to work on it, that's a really short amount of time, especially when you're wearing different hats. So I would say start as soon as possible looking at your content. So our first wave of content was due, and then on April 3rd, less than a month later, we had our first revision meeting, and they unveiled what our website was going to look like. And we all instantaneously loved it. I don't think anyone had a complaint. It was a really smooth process for us. I don't think that happens with every website. I think if some people have very strong preferences and opinions, but we were pretty much all on the same page because we had done so much work prior to getting to that point and looking at websites and features we liked that we knew where we were headed, and they hit it right on the mark. Then our second wave of content was due on April 17th, so that also not a lot of time. And then we had our second revision meeting on May 12th. And that's when we got into the nitty-gritty. So this is over here, maybe you want to move it over here. Or we had to talk about wording a lot because I really like what David was saying about, have that little evaluation. What would you call this? What do your patrons call it? They won't say databases, but will they say online resources? Or will they say journal articles? You have no idea what they want sometimes with that. So wording, I think, is important to try to figure out. And that's one thing we might have done differently, is actually asking the public in little surveys that type of information. Then on May 19th, about a week later, we had our domain transfer. And May 22nd, we had our launch meeting. So that was where all of our passwords and permissions were handed over to us, and we were able to be trained. So it was an hour of training, and then what Sterling did for us was they created little web video tutorials for us on how to update the site, and also little cheat sheets. So we had all of that information. So it was about an hour with the group, showing us the basics and how to do it. But then we have these tools to reference after, and I still go back to them when I'm updating the site. And then we had our site launch on May 23rd, and it's been great. We've gotten great feedback from our peers and also from our public, which is really important to us. The public likes it, and they're invested. So this is what it looks like now. So it's very simple, but actually if I can pull it up here. That's our peak. We won #1 in the NLA PR reports for our website. Hopefully it will load. So that's kind of the soup to nuts about the timeline. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions about it while it's loading.
Yeah, I was wondering if either you or Sterling, or you and Sterling together, did any kind of usability survey or study, just kind of, throwing like a beta test in front of some users and watching and seeing how they managed and, that kind of stuff.
We did not do that, but Sterling has worked on a lot of websites, and you came with that experience before. We did not do that specifically with with our patrons on our website, but we did make sure that it complied with disability guidelines, and it was responsive to all mobile devices. So if you see, it's still here loads. You can pull it up on your phone, yes, you'll see it. So it's very responsive on the phone. I don't know why it's not loading first. But we have more below that. So we have that banner that moves with our 4 or 5 events. We can populate that with whatever we like. I use Pixabay for photos when I update the content because it's all free use.
When you had a first wave of content due and then a second wave due, how is that divided up as to what was due in earlier and what was due in later?
So, well, it depended on how much was done, actually. Some of us had more content done than others. So the first wave, we gave them everything we had at that point. So we didn't divvy it up anyway. Everyone had their own tasks, but some people worked at different pieces. And that was fine. So then we were able to go through, and we shared it through Google Docs. We also had Dropbox, so that it was really easy for the designers to go ahead and take it and integrate it into the site. Connection is coming out. Oh my God. Darn dial-up. Alright, so you might be able to see it at home. Or on your cell phone. Does anyone have another question? Yeah.
During the ArcP process, were the potential vendors not aware that they would have to be part of a city contract? Or was that wasn't stated in the RFP, or?
So we had a new purchasing agent come on board, and we had never had to, we were using state aid to pay for it. We had not known that that was part of it, and he really wanted to go with the city contract. So we did not put that in the RFP. But we also didn't put a price in the RFP. So we didn't give any guidelines in terms of price, which you guys may have hated. I'm sorry. But I know a lot of people put, this is our maximum that we can spend. We had no idea what they were going to come in as, so we just wanted to see what the spread was.
The picture software program you said, what was it,
Pixabay.
Pixabay.
We actually,
How do you spell that?
Pixabay. Pixabay. And they brought that up when I went to a writing for the web at Nevins last week. It was done by, I think, MLS. And they had talked about that as well and some other photo content. Oh, here it is. Yay. It will load eventually. I don't know when it's due.
Did you do any kind of community survey before?
Our community survey was our patrons telling us that they did not like our site. I don't know if it's not loading properly. I might have comments, but it might be the connection.
I think we have a fair amount of traffic
Yes.
right
Well, you'll see what comes in, but if I scroll down,
Yeah.
it'll show up. There are graphics under library events and support WPL. We picked out what was most important to our users, and the support WPL is really important to us because we really need to have access to half of our nonfiction collection. And you'll see we used, actually too, during that time we were also trying to figure out some third-party vendors because we had specific requests, like we wanted a bookshelf, which Sterling built for us. So they built us a bookshelf right there. But it will have, on that bookshelf, you can populate it with things that are, for some reason it's not loading correctly right now, but it will populate it with whatever books you want. But we also decided to go with Booksite too and have the revolving what's in, just in service so that we had a more robust kind of reader's advisory. So we were figuring out some of our third-party content in our archives, actually for our digital collections. You can scroll down and see it too, but It really does work. So down here, discover our archives, our digital collections. So you can go in here and you can actually see pieces of our collection, which is really fantastic for those who are researching, say, an ancestor or researching an object that they saw when they were in 3rd grade and they went up to the museum and now they can't get up there anymore.
Your digital collections, those are just on your site, or do you use a specific program or something?
We used Past Perfect, so they were one of the third-party vendors that we were looking at. And all of that got integrated seamlessly. It was wonderful. Someone else?
Just a question about your content writing process. For you guys, you have different people writing the content. Did you have like a wireframe that you were working with? I mean, how did you figure out like what to write for which page and how many pages you were going to have and that sort of thing? Did that come from working with Sterling?
Yes, so that was part of our process, right? So we had our content that we wanted, and then we kind of figured out how it was going to fit on the page. And then during the second review meeting, we just said, oh, we don't need it to look, have that much text or whatever. So we were able to tweak it as it went along.
And were they essentially the editors so that they were making sure everything kind of sounded like it was all coming from one voice?
I think it all sounds, well, it went through the director and I too, so we saw all content. So if something wasn't sounding uniform, then we made changes to it. But for the most part, it was pretty seamless.
So now going forward, how many people do you have who have administrative rights to the website to do the changes and updates and all that?
So we have 5 people, but in reality, only 2 of us are really able to get in there and work with it. So our head of tech services, Bev, she actually, she does all of our computer upgrades and technology upgrades. So she is one of the administrators and I'm the other administrator. And then our archivist, Tom, is on there. So I'm on there a lot, Tom's on there a lot. So that's pretty much where we're updating. And then we have great forms too. We wanted a lot of forms, so ask a librarian. You can just type it in and it will come directly to me and our reference librarian, depending on who's in the building at that time. We have an archives research request. We have a teacher's request for collections you can put aside.
So when you're making changes, like, do you have your different service areas submit requests to you to make changes to their content?
Well, they all have access. So if they need to, so our children's librarian will come to me because she doesn't have as much time to update it. So she'll say, can we change this? And I'll go in and I'll do it. It's really easy to update, but you just have to have the time to play around with it. I enjoy it. I think it's fun. If I do something and I'm like, that doesn't look quite right, it's kind of like a challenge to make it look the way you want it to. So, but for the most part, it's we're making updates. The way it was built is that you don't have to do much updating at all to it. But we do update. We have a lot of feeds through. So if we write a blog post, and I write most of the blog posts, but our archivist also writes blog posts, that will go directly to our social media. Our events, we have an event calendar through EventKeeper. So that gets populated through EventKeeper, and there are people in the children's room who do that piece of it, and then it automatically shows up on the website. So things are being updated, but not necessarily in the dashboard of the website.
Are your digital collections stored in a separate system, or are they also on the website?
So they're on the website, but they're through Past Perfect, so it's a software. And then that's integrated into the website. Am I forgetting anything? Thank you so much for your patience with this.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
because I'm nervous, just wave and say speak louder. But, and I'm going to probably read a lot, so I know you're also nice. So my name is Sarah Leonardi. I'm the head of circulation and public services at the Amherst Town Library in Amherst, New Hampshire. Just to give you a little taste of, because we've talked Topeka County and Amherst is a quiet community in southern New Hampshire, Sahegan Valley. We only have a population of about 12,000, so it's slowly, it's growing pretty quickly. But we have a long, rich colonial history, particularly in town. And the library sits right in the center of that historic village. The library itself was built in 1892, and it's been expanded twice. We're open 7 days a week for a total of 63 hours. We regularly hold programs for all ages with attendance at many of those events, reaching between 50, 75, 100 participants. We're a very active community. We're governed by a 10-member library board of trustee and employ 21 staff members. We launched our website around the same time as we were in September of 2013, and thanks to the Internet Archive. That's what it looked like before, in January of 2012. The old website was difficult for staff to update. It was confusing to navigate, and it was outdated, and our goal in redoing the website was to remedy these problems by designing a new site with a revised architecture and a clean design built on the Drupal 7 CMS. In addition, we definitely wanted a site to be mobile and tablet friendly. So you have with this site, the basic navigation on the left-hand side, the catalog search box right in the center. Top, that central area was where our changing content was, where we posted if we were going to be closed, what kind of the upcoming events, things like that. We did have a series of quick links at the top for returning visitors, and then we definitely had our hours and contact information pretty prominent. You can even see it's cut off at the bottom, it's so long. It just didn't lack the visual appeal and the level of professionalism that we really wanted to convey, especially if you look at the photos of the clip art and I think the next, and the other piece, and you can see when I go to the next slide, actually how old some of those photos are. Our website, too, the domain name was a real mouthful when you were dictating it over the phone to get all those dots and dashes in there. We were constantly getting fixed up. But so going back to November 2005, that's when I first redid the website. You can see in April 2003 when I started working at the Amherst Town Library, that's what it looked like and what we did the first time. It was built using Dreamweaver. It was better. It was more graphic. At that time, we subscribed to that 3 clicks concept, and we tried to limit the amount of information that would appear below the fold. But obviously, as time went on, our services grew and it became longer. And the presentation became very cluttered. We now had 3 blogs using Blogger. We had links to the databases and ever-growing e-content, downloadable audiobooks and ebooks. We had our event calendar. We used Library Insight. We had photos from Flickr. We had connections to Facebook, a sign-up for our email newsletter, our online book clubs. And everybody in the library wanted their thing on the front page. So whether you're a reference, whether you're a children's administration, everybody had to have their thing on the front page. And it just got out of control. And in addition to the physical or the visual layout, the limitations that we had were very few staff knew how to edit the content on the page. And even we loaded Dreamweaver on multiple workstations in the library, but we only had 1 license, so really only 1% could be working on the website at one time. So all of a sudden I'd be upstairs working on a reference page, and the children's librarian would log in downstairs, and we'd both get kicked off. It's incredibly frustrating. And you had to be on site to edit the website. So anytime we had a snow closure and we wanted to say the library's closed or we're closing early, well, we couldn't do that that because we weren't there. And so, where we wanted it to be the first place for some of our visitors to go, it really didn't serve us well. And then we just acknowledged we had limits to our technical knowledge and time for training. Again, being a small staff, we had all wearing multiple hats. The other limitation was, at the time, patrons began accessing our site through multiple browsers, and the screen resolution was never quite right. It would wrap in strange ways. We tried to use like a minimum screen resolution, so we were being accessible to those people with Windows 95, but or using those old browsers. But then people who had more up-to-date software, didn't fill the screen, and so they'd say, "Why does your website only go half the page?" And it was a little long. So we found we were spending more time testing the appearance of the website rather than curating interesting and relevant content for our users. We knew the site wasn't responsive, so actually after attending the June 2011 NELA ITS Spring event, when we heard Brian give his talk on mobilizing your patrons, library services in a handheld world, we created a separate mobile website. And immediately we saw traffic on that site, and it only grew. The problem with that was keeping up with expectations. We had a real basic core services there that people could reach, but then we would put a little update in there, like we're closing on, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and then we would forget to update that site, forget to take it off, or we would link to something on the main web page, change the main web page, forget to come back here and change it, so we had all these broken links. So during that whole process, we would be searching and looking at just in the regular course of library work at other libraries and saying, how did they do that? Look at that, that's so pretty, that's so functional, it's so easy. We used Polaris as an ILS, and we would look at Denver and say, that's their catalog. But actually, if you went back one page to Denver Public Library, that's their website, and it was all laid in there. And it's like, wow, how did they do that? So we really just came to the conclusion that we are librarians, we're not web designers, and we needed to separate the content from the design, and we needed a CMS, and we needed a web developer. And in that arena, there were a number of options. So we considered WordPress and Joomla, but it didn't take us long to select Drupal, just going back to that Denver site, and seeing how the Polaris API could work in that respect. We wanted a site that would be flexible to evolve in any direction. We didn't just want a blog. We wanted to have static content and ephemeral content. We didn't just want the most current thing at the top and then slowly it, shuttles down. We wanted to be able to integrate with social media and emerging technologies like using the third-party APIs. And it was really important to us that we were being forward-thinking. It took us a long time to get to this point. We talked about this for years. And it's got a little joke in our library. We've had seven maternity leaves in 8 years between the director and I. So I just want something to kind of drag you out, but then spur you along, just have a baby. And finally, that's the piece of this when we were launching it. It was like, we gotta get this done before Sarah leaves, maternity leave. So it took us a long time. So we just didn't want to be limited by a platform because we didn't want to have to revisit this process all over again. And Drupal offers robust features, security, and ultimately stability for the long run. So the more research we did, we were convinced that Drupal was the right choice for us. In December of 2010, I took a 2-day class on Drupal at Isavera in Waltham. And the instructors walked us through the basics. I found it really easy to use. But they definitely streamlined the installation process for us so we could get using it and practicing it, creating user roles and custom content types. Not long after, I attended Drupal camp in New Hampshire, and that's when I realized there was going to be a really steep learning learning curve. The day I went to Drupal camp, I couldn't even get Drupal installed on my laptop to participate in the classes over the course of the day. I was just lost. And it really confirmed for us that we needed a web developer. So we did a little research to find out who was using Drupal locally and who designed their sites. We looked at the Keene Public Library and found out that we really liked their site. We found out it was part of a citywide development, and the city had put out an RFP for the project. Their budget was $18,000. And we couldn't spend that kind of money if we did the same balancing act. Like, how much money are we spending? We really, we can spend money to have a developer get this done for us, or we can spend all this staff time, but we didn't have anything like $18,000 to throw at this. About the same time, Neela put out the RFP for their website, and kind of reinforced. We weren't required to put out an RFP, and presumably spending the amount of money we were going to spend, we were going to hit any kind of threshold. But seeing the Keene RFP and the Neela RFP really reinforced that it was a good idea for us to clarify what we were going to really need in a site. So using those two examples, we wrote our own with our smaller budget of just $4,000. And we did put the budget in the RFP. When I was at Isabera, the designers there did recommend doing that. They said, someone can only give you a product if they know what they have to work with. And just put what you can put out there, and then you'll see what you get. So I guess there's two avenues. But so what did we, I'm not going to read you our RFP, but I am happy to share it. I know others have used it as a model following us. But basically we just noted what the problems with our site were and outlined what we thought would make it a better site. And the main things we included were having a clear purpose of what we were doing, the budget. And that was always the first question that people asked. And as much as people said, I saw your RFP, they obviously didn't read it, because the first question they said was, how much is it? How much money do you have? And we got quotes from people who called us, and they were, I said, oh, that sounds great. And they said, that sounds like it's going to be a $25,000 project. I'm like, see you later. But the other things that we knew we had to include in the RFP too were training, and then ongoing maintenance or tech support. And then we sent it out. We sent it out to the New Hampshire listservs, the Neela listservs, and we had a member posted on the Drupal group site. We received a lot of inquiries, but really only 4 complete responses in the time frame that we set out. And even though we had included evaluation criteria in the RFP, dealing with experience and cost and the impact for us and our users, the ability to meet the functionality expectations we had, scalability, and the availability of support, we had other considerations in mind that we didn't necessarily publish or didn't know until we started getting the responses. And one of the primary ones was that it was somebody local, like maybe New England. I got a lot of staticky phone call messages, or phone calls with people calling from all over the world. And I think that we might have been able to choose a developer for a lower cost that was doing it overseas for us, but the communication was not good. Literally, on the phone, and just our ability to connect wasn't there. I think the other thing that was very important to us was to find someone who could translate tech speak into concepts that non-techies could understand. It didn't have to be one person, but within a firm there needed to be the person who was doing the tech part, but then the person who could explain to those of us who weren't understanding the technical piece, what was going on. And then as a plus, somebody who's familiar with nonprofits. And when we reviewed the proposals, we selected Nathaniel Kraft out of Portland, Maine. From the outset, he set himself apart. In his proposal, he explained how he would approach the process and how he planned to meet each of our requirements. His references showcased his ability to understand each of his clients' unique needs and the ability to tailor his product for very diverse audiences. He had a humane society, the government printing office, an artist, an architect. We were also really pleased with his commitment to aesthetics, and each of his examples had a really pleasing appearance. We also enjoyed the approachable and quirky style of his business website. It showed a really good sense of humor, and that's just one on his website. You can see there's those 5 little rotating things. One says you don't have to be upper crust to have a nice website, and it's got a good sense of humor. While a lot of the proposals that we received came from librarians or from people who had worked with libraries in the past, Nathaniel had not. And we did see some benefit in having someone who is an outsider from the field challenge our assumptions about how we present and organize information. As has been said here before, as librarians, we tend to be very thorough. And our audience is not librarians for the most part. And then the last step in selecting, because it was important to us, because the process had taken us so long, was we contacted each of his references and asked how was it working with him. And they all confirmed for us that he was able to understand their unique needs and deliver quality content. And so then working with the developer who kind of knew how to structure the project was great. It was the hard part was over. He laid down a project timeline with deadlines for decisions to be made and kept us moving forward where maybe we would have been indecisive. We had to make a decision and move on and secure in the knowledge that he would make the technical side work. It freed us up to think about the content and the overall message that we wanted to convey. So the first thing that he had us do was answer a lengthy question and answer document. It was about 18 questions, and I think it was the answers to those questions that really led the development. And I think if you could take one thing away from our experience, it would be these. And I'm not going to go through all 18 questions, but I think that first and foremost, he asked us, who are the decision makers going to be? In our case, it was just the director and myself. While we were really engaged with patrons, staff, and solicited their input, from experience, we knew that we weren't going to reach a consensus with a larger group, and we just wanted to move on. The second question was, what are the core values that should be used as a guideline and what should be emphasized on the new site? In other words, do you have a vision statement? Do you have a mission statement? Is it up to date? I would suggest if you don't start there, get them up to date first. In our case, we did. We have one that we really liked, and we just moved on with that. If you had to choose 3 defining characteristics that you hope your community uses to describe your organization, what would those characteristics be? Which are those we chose. Nathaniel asked us to describe the primary audience of our organization or the organization's website, being as specific as possible. And then as a follow-up to describe any secondary audiences. In our case, we identified our primary audience as our current library cardholders, specifically the parents of young children, not the kids themselves, professionals in the workforce, and what we call in our community our active retirees. In the second group, we included librarians from other libraries and our own staff, patrons from other consortium libraries, and then researchers and students. And that was a clarifying moment for us because we had been pushing so much of that research piece where here we are in the library and realized that actually they fell way far down on the list. And actually there's some people that are willing to do a little bit more digging to get to some of the information that we have. He asked us, what do you like about your website? What did you dislike? We answered those questions individually. In terms of likes with this old website, we liked that our catalog search was front and center. We liked that we had quick links for visitors who knew what they were looking for. We liked having that changing content, and that you, well, not in this case, but in a lot of cases, usually you can see a lot of that scrolling. And our dislikes then fell into 2 categories: the look of the site, too text-heavy, too cluttered. Key information was buried, and then the technical issues with the outdated software or navigation, things like that. He asked us, what do you like? That was probably the easiest question to answer. because we spent a lot of time looking at other sites. So he asked us to provide the URLs for other websites that we liked and explain in depth why we liked them. So we chose the Frisco Library in Texas. They had a nice balance of text and graphics, really selective content and easy navigation. The Kent District Library in Michigan, again, a nice balance of text and graphics, selective content, easy navigation. And then the Hanover Library, the Howe Library in Hanover, New Hampshire, had a really professional appearance that appealed to us. And then we identified sites we didn't like. So there were more questions, but the remainder kind of touched on our existing content, what materials could stay and what could go. And I would say a lot of it went. But just asking what were the things that were really important to us, and then were there any other existing elements that we should be keeping in mind? So colors for us was a big deal. Traditionally, we had always kind of crew and green. So we said that's what we've done. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what we want to do going forward. We're open because we liked what he did far better than what we did. So, but it was nice to have that in there, and he ended up working with that. And then the last question, in order, what are the 5 most important functions or features of your website to your users? So in our case, we said the catalog access, the calendar, children's programming, ebook and database access, and then reader's advisory. We were really helping to push that with something, a new site. So recommended reading lists, for example. And then we just worked with these massive planning documents. We met with him kind of via Skype to go over all the responses to those questions and put together he put together this site map for us with wireframes based on our discussion. And then we just revised them so you can see where we circle things across the map, put them into new categories, definitely reframing what our traditional categories had been was challenging for the staff. And then in terms of, I think we flew by the seat of our pants a little bit more, and then had this deadline of, we know that someone's going to go have a baby, so we need to hurry up. So we just gave content as we needed to. He'd say, I'm working on this part, what's the content for that? And a lot of it we had already prior identified, but there was new content that we created. And then he gave us a preview of what it was going to look like. That was really, really hard for us to visualize. What is that? Is that a list? Is that a picture? Is that text? What is that? So we just asked a lot of questions. And I was going through and preparing for this talk, like the zillions of emails that are just back and forth that we had instead of having particular meetings. It was just a constant barrage of back and forth. And then ultimately he developed 2 mock-ups for us to choose from, and we just went back and forth and said we like the text on this, we like the colors on that one, that was too busy, back and forth, and then ultimately came up with what we have now. I think the one piece that was one of the questions that he asked us that highlighted a deficiency for us was regarding what were our business practices in updating the site before. And we said, we don't really have any. He said an itemized list of the order of steps you take when you update the site. And we said, yeah, we don't have any. And I guess going through that, as much as we tried to get everybody involved, we did realize after we got to this point, was that maybe we should have had at this point a little bit more input from some of the staff, our children's librarian, because our children's and teens, and she, as much as we're trying to get things consistent, she definitely wanted things to pop more and have a different feel. So I think that we achieved that in the end, going back and forth. It's still pretty consistent. But one of the valuable deliverables that he gave us in the end was a style guide, and And we really tried to stick to it within this, because if you saw our children's website before, it was a yellow box with pink writing, and every new children's library we had, we had 3 over the course of a few years, had a new blog or a new website, and they were always different, so at least we've got some consistency here, but I think we probably could have included a few more people along the way a little bit earlier. But we were pleased. I realized in this, I forgot to include a slide of our mobile site, but this, I mean, you can bring it up on your phone, you can see, or actually I was going to do it on there. If you slide it down, it's really responsive. And the other thing that we asked for was a favicon, so people could save the site on their phone. So we didn't have an app, we don't have a library app, but we have something that's pretty identifiable for us. So it's like, click the button, there you are. Which has been really good. But in preparing for this presentation, I realized how much we've taken for granted how well this works and how easy it is to update now that we've gotten this far, and realize all the things that we haven't done that we said we were going to do. But we have, different staff members, writing to their blog, filling in the calendar, and it all just shows up, which is great and so easy to learn. We just had an intern come to work with us for the summer, and that historical highlight was like the first 4 hours she worked. After the first 4 hours she worked, we gave her a login, she posted something right to the website. It was that easy, which we never could have done before. I think that's all.
The question, who is your audience? How do you figure that out? And the top 5 most important things to users, like how did you find out those 2 things?
So we did with our old site use Google Analytics, and we continue to do that. So I think we could see where people were going with our old site. We could see the top pages, the top places that people were going, and we could see that we had tons and tons of pages, but really everyone just stayed on the front page and didn't dig down deeper, but then the few that they continued to go to, we could see those. The audience, I think, came from a strategic planning process with the trustees, just in general, in terms of library planning, more than just the website. But I think it was keepers. I think our, previously our children's site, for example, was very much designed for the kids, and realized that really it wasn't the kids so much that were accessing it, it was their parents, and so we tried to tailor this a little bit better.
How much did you spend in the end for the web developer?
So he gave us we put in our ArcP $5,000 actually, and he came in with a proposal at $4,000, which I wouldn't say is the reason that we chose him, but I think by the end we probably did do a little bit of changing, and we have paid for ongoing maintenance. So with all of the core Drupal updates, he's done it for us, in the middle of the night, taken it down, put it into maintenance mode, and done that. But I don't think we didn't spend more than $5,000. Yeah.
Do you use any third-party tools to bring that in content?
We do, and some of them we got rid of. Like we used to have a Today in Literature thing that came up inside, we just got rid of that. But the upcoming events are through Library Insight. The new arrivals is pulled from, it's a module in Drupal, but it's pulled from records in the catalog. There are, on the reader's shelf, online book clubs that show up there. At the bottom, you can see links to Flickr and things like that. But in terms of pulling things in, that's the one thing that we haven't done yet. But hopefully we'll be like number soon. We have the ability to do it.
You have Facebook?
Yes. At the bottom.
Who maintains that?
That's a great question.
That's why we're reluctant to.
Our Facebook isn't great. We don't have a good schedule. Sorry. Thank you.